Okay, everybody. I've got a surprise segment for you guys. Surprise segment, surprise video. You guys are gonna shit bricks when you see it. From Jubilee, Black Conservatives versus White Liberals. It's not the title that'll make you shit bricks. It's gonna be the panelists. Or panelist, I should say.
This is the 100.
The main reason is that because conservatives don't generally care about the stability of parental structures when they talk about it. It's one of those things that conservatives will argue that sounds really nice. Like, it sounds really nice. Conservatives love making arguments that sound really nice. And if you don't look beyond the surface of their arguments, they seem very sound, but they usually can't hold up to much scrutiny. And the hypocrisy is usually very, stark if you look for it. And in a case like this, it's obvious. You've heard many conservatives argue about how, I'm not racist. I just think that black people, if you look at the stats, are more likely to do crime and are more likely to be violent. And you'll argue, why do you think that's the case? And if they're smart enough to lie, well, they'll argue, well, I think there's a lot of issues, such as, black fathers leaving their pregnant girlfriends and leaving them to be single mothers. And it's a big problem with black fathers. They'll argue that a lot. And they'll, suggest or argue that it's the lack of a parental family unit stably existing that's the problem. But then they'll argue that you can't claim that the events of the past are an excuse for what's happening now. They'll say rap music and fatherless homes are the cause for adult criminal behavior, while in the same breath arguing that generational wealth isn't a factor. It makes no sense. It's blatantly hypocritical.
Being with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to.
Also, the biggest consumers of rap music, like gangster rap music, are white suburban kids. Okay, affirmative action's problem is that it ineffectively handles the issue it is trying to solve. It's a band-aid solution that also has a, I'm a vax rebel, oh god. It's a band-aid solution that isn't even all that effective, and typically the people who get the most benefit from it, if Just Pearly Things was smart enough to use examples, she could have used affirmative action as one. The people who benefit most from affirmative action are white women. They have a massive disproportionate advantage due to it, much more so over, say, black women or black men, because they are seen as part of a marginalized group, but they are still a benefitter of white privilege, and so they end up having white privilege plus affirmative action as a benefit for them. And so white women, in particular as a demographic, perhaps get an unfair shake. A unfair positive advantage, I should say, due to affirmative action. But the idea of fixing these problems is not bad. And these are not, like, sly, racist, like, schemes by the Democrats. Like, in what way does the welfare state act as a racist scheme from white Democrats who are secretly racist to hurt black Americans? Republicans have been desperate lately to try to make it seem like welfare is a bad thing. I mean, they always have, but they've gotten to the point where they straight up say, we have gotten 2,000 Americans off of welfare. And they don't say, and into a stable income. They just say, we've gotten them off of welfare. As in, they don't have welfare anymore. And then they go on to talk about how people are abusing food stamps. And it's like, dog, you can't even buy a hot meal with food stamps. I don't know. There we go. We're already getting the black fatherlessness argument already. So he's trying to reconcile his position that he thinks that black fathers not being around is like the cause of the issues that the black community faces in America, while at the same time trying to argue against the prospect that generational wealth and stability is a large factor in why the black demographic in America is so heavily the victim of policing and prostitution. Wait, what is he? Is he referring to, like, the person who founded Planned Parenthood or something?
Throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
I don't even know what that means in this scenario because, yes.
You're
okay, you want to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black...
Yeah, okay, he's talking about Planned Parenthood. Okay. Margaret Sanger. Okay. Yeah. This is delusional. He's just got a lot of saved like talking points. I like Destiny charging up. I appreciate Destiny charging up right now. He's got his eyes closed and he's looking down. He's got his hands on his knees. He's in like the meditation position. He almost looks like he's floating because like the black chairs are blending into the black background. So it almost looks like he's floating. He's powering up. He's getting ready to smite this kid.
I quit race because she thought they were
minded people will simply refer to the party switch. The party switch is not. It's way more complicated than there was a party switch. Prior to the 1960s, like in the years following the Civil War, the way that political parties worked was very different than the way they work today. American politics was still very divided by South and North at the time. And so Democrats in the South were just as pro-slavery as Republicans in the South. And Democrats in the North were just as anti-slavery as Republicans in the North. Because at that time, whether or not you were pro-slavery depended largely on whether or not it was financially beneficial in your region to support it. Northern states were heavily, heavily industrialized, which meant a lot of their politicians could get away with not being in favor of slavery, while the South, at the time, was heavily agricultural, which were, you know, at the time, they had a very, like, strong reliance on slavery for their economy, and for decades, a century after, to this day after, tons of people in the South, politicians too, aren't over what happened with the Civil War. Even the Democrats, and so the term was Dixiecrats for those Southern Democrats that were also in favor of slavery. However, as you know, a century since then went by, the political parties and the people in them started to change a lot to where we see nowadays there's much less of a South-North political divide. I mean, it still exists to an extent. Generally, northern states that were, you know, the states that back in the day were anti-slavery today tend to vote blue, and the states that were pro-slavery back in the day tend to vote red. There's no coincidence there. But outside of that, things have changed quite significantly, and the racist party has consolidated itself to Republicans. You can't argue that the racists who hate black people don't vote Republican. That is their party. And people who are like super soy cuck SJW liberals who are like super white guilt on the other end of things vote Democrat. You can't argue that either, or you can't argue against that either. The Republican Party is the party that racists vote for. That is not an arguable quote. You can't argue against that. That is just the truth. That is a fact of reality. That is a law of politics. We no longer divide it based on North or South. It is now Republican and Democrat. It's consolidated. It's split up. It's changed. It's morphed. It's been literally over a century. So yeah, with that in mind, when people try to say Democrats supported slavery or Democrats supported insert racist policy, not only are those Democrats not alive anymore, but also we're literally talking about a time in American history where the landscape of politics was not even recognizable compared to today in regards to how you identified yourself politically and ideologically in America. So many black conservatives have what's called survivorship bias. Just because there is a massive systemic trend towards discrimination and, you know, like being on the back foot starting out if you're black in America doesn't mean there aren't black people who have made it. And if you're black and you've made it, and you're constantly seeing black people saying it's impossible or just practically impossible to make it if you're black in America, you're going to think, nah, I did it. I even find myself thinking that from time to time as a YouTuber. You know, I see people saying it is practically impossible to start off as a YouTuber these days. And I think, nah, it's possible. I did it. But then I remember I did it years ago and it did take a lot of hard work and I'm still working hard at it. It is a lot harder than, you know, I even think it is. And I have a bias because I succeeded. I don't know how common it is to fail entirely. And that same thought process motivates a lot of sincere black conservatives. Obviously, there's a lot of black conservatives that are just paid shills and grifters like Candace Owens, but there are many black conservatives who are genuine Republican voters. They are sincere in their positions. Their brain rot is genuine. And I think that mindset, that survivorship bias, is a large source of that thought process. And so here you can see them arguing they don't like being put into a box with the rest of black Americans. They don't like being put in the same category as, like, pro racial justice, BLM supporting, cop hating the average black American. They want to be seen as separate. They think that, like, the rest of mostly white liberal Americans are, like, grouping them in together as, I guess, supposed to have the the same positions. But it's not that you have to be in lockstep with everybody else who looks like you. It's that most black people have had the lived experience that has brought them to the correct position, that racial injustice is a problem in this country, and people are trying to get you to understand you're wrong. It's not that you're being discriminated against and being forced into a box, it's that you're incorrect, and when you're incorrect, people like to correct you and try to push you towards being correct. Or might even just straight up, bully you for being incorrect. That might happen too.
All these things, because you're...
I don't care. I genuinely don't care. When black conservatives try to say that you're racist as, like, a progressive white person for arguing against racist talking points, don't listen to them. They're weaponizing their race. It is not a valid argument. Let them call you racist. It doesn't matter. Everybody who actually can see past identity and see the arguments that are being used will recognize that you're not racist.
You're telling me as a white person that me...
Yes, I will tell you that you're a bootlicker. Yes, I will.
As a black person, that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality.
Your name's Xavier. My name's Alex Xanderhal, okay? Your name is just off from being the same as the author of Roots. I have the same name, and thus I am more black than you. That's how it works. I don't make the rules. I'll make the rules. I hope that gets clipped.
In, that to me is real racism, and that's...
Then you ain't black. Insert sound effect .mp4 of like a steak being put on a pan. That's the sound I imagine in the meme where Biden removes the melanin from that woman.
These other...
Melatonin. Motherfucker said melatonin.
It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to...
You guys know melanin only turns dark when exposed to sunlight, right? Do you guys know that? Like, scientifically, that is, like, indisputably the case. Melanin is literally a chemical in your skin that, in response to sunlight, turns brown, which acts as a protective measure against sun exposure. White people just don't have melanin, which is why we don't brown as easily in the sun. Very interesting. I didn't know that, and I learned it very recently, and I found it very interesting. So melanin is actually not by default even brown. It's like a super tan. That's incorrect, Zan? No, it's not.
Follow this path, and you have to think a certain way.
I think America is a great place for a black person.
Well, we have melanin. We just have much less of it. That's why we can tan. The reason we tan is because of the melanin. But if you sunburn, then you've basically lost your progress. But the little bit of melanin you might have if you're white is what will protect you naturally against some sun damage. And if you just get a nice tan, then you got protected enough. Like, your melanin in your skin that may not even be visible protected you against sunlight enough that you didn't get a sunburn. But if you get burned, then you just didn't have enough. And yeah, some white people have less, some white people have more, some black people have less, and some black people have more.
I think I'm an American.
It's very interesting. Like, outside of, like, racists who try to make it, like, a really weird conversational topic and whatnot, it's very interesting. Like, why certain humans look different is always, like, an interesting scientific, like, rabbit hole. But obviously in current day, the less individual black people will have direct examples that they'll notice of where they've been systemically discriminated against. Where it has become the most obvious is obviously in the court system, where there is indisputable bias. And I don't think this girl's ever been to prison or ever been in front of a judge. But there is an indisputable bias, like, that they haven't noticed. Because they haven't had that experience. But what really matters, what's had the largest effect, is actually the generational impacts of racism. There are black people in America alive today who are literally around to witness, and they are not old either, by the way, to witness the cops turning fire hoses on black protesters in the civil rights movement. And by there are a lot, I mean like literally millions. Like it's not like, oh, World War II veterans, there's like 10 of them left. No, it's like 67, well, they wouldn't be 70. They'd be like 80-year-olds. Like 70 and 80-year-olds were around for that shit, okay? Like, it's not that long ago. Literally, when your parents and grandparents couldn't drink at the same, like, water fountain as white people, when they couldn't go to a bank and get a loan for a house or buy a house in certain neighborhoods, and those neighborhoods where they were redlined into have to this day become, like, the ghetto. You guys know that, right? When you go to insert city, go to like Chicago, go to Detroit, the areas that you would call the ghetto, look at a redlining map from back in the 60s of that city. The areas where black people were allowed to move into back in the day are those areas. They are small places that were generally poorly constructed or are very old, and so the construction doesn't matter anyway because they've degraded. And when you live in like a area that has been confined like that, there's so many other ways in which you can keep a population in that position. For example, schooling. American schools are funded by property tax. If you live in a bad neighborhood, if you live in an area where the houses are really shitty and the property is really shitty and the property tax is really low, the funding to the school, the local school, all the kids in that neighborhood are zoned to, is really low, which means you're going to a shitty school where you're getting a shitty education, where you have shitty opportunity. And eventually, a lot of the time, it's going to look like your only opportunity is crime. And guess what? Even if it's a minor thing, even if it's just you had some weed on you, guess what? There is an indisputable criminological consensus that in front of a judge, a black person is way more likely to get a harsher sentence than a white person. It is not arguable. These are people who've lived very privileged. Studies that show, like, you can also see the areas in which the highest quantity of, like, lead paint is still used. Like, those houses that I mentioned before where, like, black people were redlined into in the 60s and before in particular. Obviously, massive problem with lead paint. And the lead paint doesn't just go away if you chip it off the walls and dispose of it or you, like, paint over it or whatever. Most of the time, it's just painted over, which means it's still there. It chips off and it ends up being a problem. It's in the sand. It's in, like, the cracks and crevices. That lead paint is everywhere. It's a heavy metal. It doesn't just go away. It's around. It's where the kids play. It's where people are walking around. It's where cars are kicking up dust, and it's wafting through the neighborhoods. Hell, cars were using leaded gasoline not too long ago. Who would have thought? The massive drop in crime we've seen over the last few decades coincides directly with the with us getting rid of lead in gasoline and the consecutive fall in the population and storage of said leaded gasoline that was still being used after the ban. Who would have thought? That lead exposure has a pretty significant impact, but it's not just one thing. Remember, it is a cavalcade of issues all coming together to affect black people demographically, not as a whole, but generally. Not every black person is you know, suffering from these issues. That's why you've got black conservatives who sincerely believe the things they do, and they've gotten out of the situations they're in, or they're born into a good situation, so they've never known poverty or they've never known discrimination. But these factors they're not going to make a good argument. The reason affirmative action was bad was because it was not a good solution in the first place to the problem it was trying to solve, and it had many backwards benefits that just weren't actually that were actually helping the demographics that didn't need help, like white women. Obviously, like, women as a whole have a harder time, but not as badly, not so bad that affirmative action was necessary.
Every black person knows how to get into college. I mean, you can pull out the names, the Oprah. No, every black person does not know how to get into college. You know why? Because every white person doesn't know how to get into college. You literally have to have, like, a teacher or, like, a specific program at your school where they talk to you and they tell you the process for applying to colleges and getting in. That is the biggest pile of horseshit I have ever heard, Renee. I went to a nicer school when I was in high school. There's literally a teacher dedicated to telling you and helping you work out what colleges you want to sign up for and, like, send letters to and apply for. Obviously, I didn't go down that road. I became a YouTuber. But I know about that process, and I guarantee you, if you're going to a shitty, inner-city, underfunded high school, they are not going to have very good resources for you to access. That is the biggest pile of horseshit I've ever heard, that every black person knows how to get into college. I didn't know how to get into college when I was a high schooler. Yeah, the guidance counselor. Yeah, thank you. It's a guidance counselor usually. How much you want to how well qualified do you think the underfunded inner city schools guidance counselors are for getting these kids like set up for getting their college like applications ready? Like, how many of them even have a computer at home to write up their applications? It's just like, yeah, it makes no sense. It's complete horseshit. Reality disagrees with this woman's ideology. So yeah, literally, just because there's been a few successful black people, that justifies, yeah, like any black person can do it if there's been a few that have done it. This is obviously like insane. This is like arguing that any sea turtle, any baby sea turtle can make it to the sea, while meanwhile it's like 5% of them actually make it past the shore and don't get eaten by seagulls or crabs. And it's like, okay, granted, any sea turtle could do it, but far from every sea turtle is able to do it. There is no meritocracy in America. Might makes right in America. Might makes right in this world. That is the rule that has been the case for as long as human civilization has been the case. Might makes right. It's as simple as that. If you have the power, if you have the guns, if you are the one who can kill any dissenters, then you make the rules. That's how governments work. It's how the police work. It's how the military works. We as citizens, realistically, don't have the ability to go against the rules made by the government because they have the might to crush us. The same goes for every other nation and their citizenry, until the citizenry has more might than said nation's power structure and dismantles it and takes it down from the inside. Or a more mighty nation crushes another nation. That has been the way of things for a very long time. Might makes right has been how the world has functioned for a long time. It is not morally right, though. It is not. It is a flawed and horrible thought process, but we've still operated on it for a very long time. One Piece! I noticed the One Piece thing. I've never seen One Piece, but I know you guys like it. We as humans have evolved beyond the primal baser instincts of, like, wanting to grug everything that has, or everyone else who has our stuff that we want. And realize that actually functioning together and being kind to each other in a cooperative society is actually realistically the best way forward as a species. But there are, for some reason, a lot of people who disagree with that prospect, and those people are conservatives. Like, conservatives morally disagree with the idea of creating a meritocracy because they believe that might makes right is meritocracy. But it's not. A meritocracy is one in which there is a system with rules and guidelines and regulations that ensure every individual has the same meritocratic chance at success. That means if somebody is born with a I guess it would be called a congenital condition, in which, let's say, they don't have legs, they wouldn't be left to live their life with the same amount of handicaps and benefits as any other person would have. They would be offered every benefit they could have to be on the same playing field in terms of how much effort they have to put in as everybody else. The idea is everybody should be having to put in an equal amount of effort for success. What conservatives expect of black people is they put in enormous amounts of effort in order to succeed in the same way white people can with far less effort. They believe that massively disproportionate amount of effort that black people are forced to put in, realistically, if they want to succeed via the system, is fair. That's meritocracy. That is not how it should be. That is not meritocracy. Meritocracy is where everybody is at the same point in the starting line, not where everybody is at different points and black people are really far back from the starting line, and meritocracy is when they just have to figure it out. That's not what it is. No. That's might makes right, is what that is. And that is not the same as meritocracy. A person who self-identifies as Asian will need 140 SAT points higher than whites, 320 SAT points higher than Hispanics, and 450 SAT points higher than African Americans. Okay, let's look into this, because that's a 2009 study, and we just read a factcheck.org thing that said the United States Department of Education's consensus is that it would be harder for Asian Americans to get into colleges if affirmative action was taken away. So it's possible that in regards to SAT scores, this is true, but SAT scores are not like, that's not like as simple as it is. What is SAT? Okay, so the SAT test is a test that you take usually in your junior, but sometimes in your senior year of high school, and you send that score. You can take it as many times as you want, but you have to pay. That's the big thing. And that's why this is very misrepresentative. You can take the SAT as many times as you want and just send your highest score to colleges, but they charge you for every test you take. I think it's like $40 per try. So if you have enough money, you can just send your kid in to retry, $40 every time, not counting the other expenses like your pencils and your like calculator and all that other stuff you have to bring in. There's like a very special calculator you need for the calculus portion and the math portions of the SAT. It's that like special math calculator. Yeah, $55, sorry. So the reason why this is the case is likely because if you are Asian in America, the vast majority of the time, not only are you more likely to get a higher score on your SAT the first time, but you're more likely to have the money generationally and familially to afford multiple tries in the SAT. The same goes for white people, while the same does not go for Hispanic and African Americans, who, let's be honest, most African American families cannot afford multiple tries for the SAT. Okay? $55 is more. That's more than a day's groceries, guys. $55 is more than a family's day of groceries, okay? That is a lot of fucking money for your kids maybe, to be retrying the SAT, all right? I'm going to trust the United States Department of Education and their statement on affirmative action and whether or not it would harm or benefit Asian Americans for it to continue to exist over this study that seems somewhat cherry-picked around SAT scores, which are not very well representative of chances to get into college anyway, because scholarships and other academic achievement also exist. For example, my swimming varsity letters would have gotten me into college despite my not-so-great SAT scores, because I was a horrible tester. And on top of that, there are other extracurricular activities that give you a higher chance of getting into college as well if you include it in your accomplishments. For example, I did a science fair project when I was in middle school that went to the state science fair, and that actually would have a bearing on my chances of getting into certain colleges. They would consider that as like an accomplishment for consideration. So there's just a lot of other factors outside of SAT score, and SAT score is so vulnerable to just being able to brute force it if you have enough money and just get a high score because you have enough money, that I understand why this policy exists. Though it's not perfect. Once again, I believe that affirmative action policies should be based around income, your family's income.
These that have courses, etc., that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percent.
The Dark Canuck says, I grew weed to put my daughters through college. Are you the mom from Weeds? What the fuck? Based, though.
So much money from so many people to do.
Black Lives Matter is an organization, yes, and as an organization, there are some good people in said organization, and there are some good things that they've done, I'm sure. But overall, I do not support the Black Lives Matter organization, the actual like group organization. The movement, though, the Black Lives Matter movement is entirely different. It is far broader. Its membership literally only requires you to identify with it and to believe in the ideology of wanting racial justice in this country and believing that Black Lives Matter. Like, what these people try to do so desperately is conflate the Black Lives Matter movement with the Black Lives Matter organization. And so they'll just talk about Black Lives Matter as a whole. They talk about things the organization has done, and they talk about things the movement has done in the same breath, because they don't want to allow their audience to see any distinction between these two groups. Because they are very different groups. Black Lives Matter, the movement, is something the majority of Americans support, while Black Lives Matter, the organization, is something the majority of Americans don't even know exist.
Do absolutely nothing with it, nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump
once again, destroying cities. They literally think Portland's been burned to the ground.
doesn't support Black lives.
I love black people. I have all the best black friends. They like to go golfing with me, and they voted for me, and they said that I won the election. I'm the least racist president that has ever existed in the history of America. I'm telling you, folks. Not a single president ever in the history of America has ever been as good and anti-racist as me.
Yeah, the Vax Rebel is thrilled by Alex impersonation. Hold on. Let's debunk this talking point too. Biden on the 1994 crime bill. Former Vice President Joe Biden defended his support decades ago for a controversial crime bill, saying in a speech in South Carolina, "There's another part of my long record that's being grossly misrepresented, the 1994 crime bill." We'll go through Biden's points about what was in the bill and what he supported or opposed. Biden spoke about the bill in a speech in Sumter on July 6, in which he addressed his earlier remarks a few weeks ago about working with some civility in the 1970s with two segregationist Southern Democrats to get things done, even though we didn't agree on much of anything. Biden, who is leading the national polls for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination, apologized in his Sumter speech, saying, "I'm sorry for any of the pain or misconception his remarks may have caused anybody." He also made extensive remarks about the 1994 crime bill, which Biden, as a chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, largely wrote and shepherded through the legislative process. The Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994 received bipartisan support at the time, but has been criticized for some of its provisions, such as mandatory minimum sentencing and its impact on mass incarceration. When we looked at claims in 2016 from both sides of the law's role in mass incarceration, we found the trend of increasing imprisonment began well before 1994, but experts told us that the 1994 law exacerbated the issue. The legislation was aimed at addressing rising crime in the country and contained a host of policing and crime prevention provisions, including 3 strikes mandatory life sentences for repeat violent offenders, funding for community policing and prisons, an assault weapons ban, and the Violence Against Women Act. It authorized $30.2 billion. So no doubt the assault weapons ban and the Violence Against Women Act were the two big parts that Biden supported. It authorized $30.2 billion, according to Congressional Research Services report on federal crime measures. It increased federal crime subject to the death penalty and enabled juveniles to be tried as adults for violent and firearm-involved federal crimes. So, this was unanimously and bipartisanly supported at the time and passed just overwhelmingly. Crime was at a pretty large high at the time, and being tough on crime was very popular with everybody everywhere at the time. And it has had horrible effects in hindsight. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last time, that Democrats have worked with Republicans on a bipartisan bill that will have negative downstream effects that maybe could have been predicted, but weren't really taken into account at the time. Now, though, in 2023, conservatives are trying to use that against Biden, something that is not unique to him, something that does not apply to him today, as a way of defending someone who is very much still and unapologetically open with his racist tendencies on sort of like your average boomer conservative level, but his willingness, more worryingly, his willingness to accept and bring in white nationalists, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists into the fold of his supporter base, right? So once again, conservatives just blatantly lying. As much as I'd like to go through the rest of this video just debunking lie after lie, we're barely halfway through it and it's been an hour, so I think we're going to cut it short here with that segment because you guys can, of course, see we're not even halfway through it. Whew, you can't say I don't transform the content I react to.